Hey, Illuminati. Livy here, and I wanted to introduce you to week four. Way to go, y'all. You're doing such a good job. I know that there's been kind of some hiccups on getting some things up on time or whatever. Don't panic, it's okay. I kind of held off on getting things posted until today so that you guys could kind of take a moment to breathe and think, oh man, she doesn't have it posted yet. Yay. So, yeah, I guess you can say I still relate to being a student for sure. So nothing is due Wednesday. It's all due on Sunday of this week. So I'm going to give you your kind of give you the skinny on your assignments, and then also kind of reflect on what you guys turned in this last week as part of your artist journal assignments, which were mind-bendingly amazing. Paired with your articulations around them, it was just. I mean, it was a pleasure for me to see where you are and where you're thinking about how things are in the world of art ed and how that fits into the world of accountability and how the education system is kind of constructing itself or reconstructing itself. And like what kind of transitions are we in? And some of all of that kind of became unearthed in some of your articulations and through your experiences. So I want to give you your assignment, kind of give you the skinny, kind of recap what you guys offered to each other last week, and then kind of head us off into a direction. So the first thing that I have posted, and it should be just below this video, is a link to an art show that was put on by Shyla Rao, who is a MICA art education expert. So she both worked at MICA, and I think she might have went to MICA, I'm not sure. But anyway, she doesn't work at MICA anymore, Maryland Institute College of Art. But she was really curious as a researcher about assessment in art education and what we artist teachers do with it, or how we navigate through it or navigate with it throughout our day. So she asked a lot of really interesting questions. And so one of the things that she did, which I thought was brilliant, and quite frankly, I wish I would have thought of it because it's just so juicy, is she had art teachers do an art show where the artwork that they created was about assessment. And so this link will kind of show you, as you scroll through it, you'll see some really cool pieces of artwork that people have made as a reflection. There's some, I mean, it's just, they're great. And if you like kind of spend a moment or two with some of the pieces that were created, or even a moment or two to like VTS it yourself, oh my gosh, they're so good. There was a show that she put on in 2014, so I know it's 3 years later, but like those pieces still stay with me a lot of times when I'm talking about assessment with other art teachers. So that's part one of your assignment, is to just visit that show, and I'd love to see you like incorporate, I don't know, like a sentence or two into like what else, excuse me, you'll post for the week, but like no have to whatsoever. So the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to read chapter 1, 2, and 3 in Ahead of the Curve. And this one, and the big green one, like you're the Douglas Reeves one. And so the reason that I have this book in the curriculum is because it is often what many administrators are trained with. They're like Reeves and Marzano is a lot of the administration training is this. And what I found was, at first I thought I was going to be a little bit more like not agreeing with a whole lot of this, but see, the thing is like what I wasn't agreeing with necessarily wasn't like the original intent that they write in these books, but the way that it gets interpreted. And so I really think it's desperately important for we artist teachers to have a great exposure to the original intent of a lot of the ways that assessment is done in schools, instead of like only knowing how it's being interpreted in the school we work in, or the school we will work in the future, or the school that we were a student in, what have you. You can always feel the effects of assessment, don't get me wrong, but some of them are, the way that it's done is interpreted differently. But this is kind of one of the core, it's like a collection of the core values of a lot of ways that whole school assessment policies get written and get done. Get written, and then the way that they get done is different for every school. So Chapters 1, 2, and 3, using assessments to improve teaching and learning. Chapter 2, involving students in the classroom assessment practices, nothing that we haven't heard of before. And then Chapter 3 is by Rick Stegens, and it's assessment for learning, an essential foundation for productive instruction. So you can see how it's very sales pitchy for why assessment is good and how you can use it and stuff like that. And I get that. And I understand that this book sounds more like a sales pitch for assessment, whereas intentionally, and I put them next to each other because they're so different, the Cone book, Schooling Beyond Measure, is saying like, yes, this is just a sales pitch. Don't believe a word of it. Don't do anything about it. And so these two are really polar opposite. And by putting them next to each other and you using your artist journal to think with them, it's just really kind of an interesting paradox that you're sitting in where you're reading kind of polar opposite texts intentionally. I think that putting these polar opposite texts near each other almost mimics what it feels like to be an art teacher in the era of accountability, because there's so many things that you can't even articulate that are amazing about being an art teacher, and then there's obviously things that you cannot quantify. You cannot put a number on some things, or maybe shouldn't. But then on the other end of that, it's like we have that grade book, and it's like we signed a contract that says, yeah, like every 2 weeks I'm going to put in my progress report, or yes, I'll put in interim grades or whatever, or yes, I'll use this district mandated standardized rubric. So you kind of exist in between these two books, between Cohen and between Reeves, and so why not put kind of some of their thinking, from outside of our heads, and just kind of see what they do next to each other. So you're going to read these 3 chapters, and you're going to choose another Cohen, one of his collection of unorthodox essays. Just you choose one more, and so this time it's a little bit more heavy on this text and less heavy on the Cone text, so it's kind of opposite on weightedness than last week. What you're going to do is you're going to do something different when you read this. What you're going to do is on scrap paper or on Post-it notes, and I've got like scads of Post-it notes. I know you guys do too. I mean, I've just got tons. So I'm going to sneeze. Or maybe not, is as you're reading, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to make a collection of statements. So let's say you're reading chapter 1, and you're like, it's something that you might highlight, or it's something that you might have a question about, or something like that. It's like you're just making a collection of statements. So instead of like highlighting in your book, have a stack of old receipts that you write on the back of. It doesn't matter what it's on. I just use Post-its because they're easy. Or index cards or scrap paper or whatever, or maybe intentionally choose paper, who knows. And you're going to collect the statements that just kind of step out, like stick to you for some reason, not good, not bad, or maybe very good or very bad, I don't know. And you're going to do that for chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. And so if I were you, I might just note like what page they were on, just so that you can revisit them later, like if we write more or something like that. And so you're going to end up with this like short stack of collected statements from chapters 1, 2, and 3. Then what you're going to do is you're going to sit back, maybe give them a day or two to just rest, and then you're going to sort them. And I don't know what the categories are going to look like. But one of the just look across them all, spread them all out, and then start moving them about. So for instance, one of them could be, makes the most sense in art education. Like these here, out of all of these statements, these make the most sense in my classroom. Makes the least sense in art education. These make the most sense, these make the least sense, and then there's these like little ones, maybe it's a gradient or something like that. Another way to categorize could be like, hear this all the time, don't hear this enough. Like these are the statements I hear all the time in my context, and I don't hear these enough. Another could be, the world my students know, the world me as an artist knows. I don't know. I mean, just think about how you might categorize those. So you're going to collect your statements, you're going to look across them, and then you're going to find an interesting way to categorize the statements that you've collected. Then what you're going to do is you're just going to post on your blog like a photo of your statements, and then how you categorize them, and maybe if you can't read them from the photos, maybe an example or two of the different sentiments that or the different statements that you collected. So you're going to do that for ahead of the curve, and that's kind of a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, just because there was kind of a lag in this week for getting things like done and accomplished. For one thing, I don't know if you heard, but we had a hurricane, and this is South Carolina, so I mean it was bananas around here. I mean, absolute bananas. But luckily, we totally lucked out. Don't get me wrong, but I mean it was like rush on gas, rush on water, rush on everything, and so like it felt like the whole way of life was upside down. And then some of us had other things going on too. So anyway, what I'm saying is when you choose choose any chapter from Schooling Beyond Measure that attracts your attention, and just react to it. Visually, verbally, whatever. It can be pretty short. It could be, a quick little like blurb on your blog page, or it could be a full-on artist journal page, or whatever you want. Now, the only thing that I'm going to ask is just to go back to the statements collection from Ahead of the Curve. Is the only thing I am going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to keep those little slips of paper that have your statement collection on them, and I want you to like put them in your artist journal in something like this. Like I grabbed this, so I would maybe attach this into my artist journal. Put a little glue on it, and then I could put my statements inside of my artist journal here, and then I could close it up if need be, and then maybe even put the category on it, something like that. So find a clever way to keep them attached into your artist journal so you don't lose them. So that's kind of your artist journal assignment, is to just mostly like find a way to keep your statements collections. And I think that's about it. But on the note of last week, so one of the really interesting things that I noticed is that your artist journal pages are extraordinary. They are extraordinary. They're very rich. There's so much time invested in them. There's so much thought invested in them. It's not even funny. I am going to ask that sometime, like this next time in the future, if you reference something that you've read, go ahead and just at least put the author's last name in there. That does two things. Number one, it makes me know that you engaged with your reading, and two, it makes me go like, oh my gosh, yeah, I totally see. I mean, because sometimes y'all will read something and I take it totally differently, and I'll assume it's from somebody else, but it's not. You know what I mean? So it's like it's clarity between you and I, but then it's also like just you offering evidence that yeah, you engaged with the reading and you're good to go. So here are some of my statement collection from you guys from your blog post from this last week. Beth said, she was really toying with the word good enough. And I thought that was really interesting, especially like offering different images to kind of like provoke us as the viewer to like see what is good enough and who decides. And she also said that like she sees that assessment a lot of times is trying to distill order from chaos. And then she concludes with saying like, I want my assessments to be for my students, like as in on behalf of the good of them instead of, on my students. Becky said when she was talking about her artist journal, and then she says, I didn't want it to seem that standardized testing was directly funneling to what has been developing in art ed, but in reality, that is what happens. So I found this as a striking sentiment of Becky's. She said that which we do in our classroom is really and dynamically altered by the context in which we live. And so you can think of your art ed room or your classroom in the context of the school, in the context of the state, in the context of the nation, in the context of the culture, in context of, and so what we're doing in this class is we're really trying to peel back out of our own experiences into what are those contexts out there, and how are they getting to me, and what can I do to push back if there's something I don't agree with, or what can I find out there that's working and I can pull in. And so I think that's something that this course is designed to do for you. And so I really thought, I appreciated how she was really thinking about the contextual factors that kind of, as she said, funnel into. Liz's image is, it's organic in nature, but it's also a swinging pendulum. And so I really kind of appreciated the force of of physics to create the pendulum, and then also kind of the organic nature from which her image comes from. You need to visit her website to see it. And then she also states that the way that she does assessment is wrapped in play, reflection, self-grading, challenging for themselves, and about time management. And I found that really interesting when you put those words into play with the way that we typically think of assessment. It's great because assessment does not only mean that which you can quantify. In fact, the origin of the word assessment means to sit beside, in order to just to be with somebody. So that is what the origin of the word assessment is to sit beside and play and help them reflect, and to help them come up with how they want to challenge themselves. It's amazing. And then Liz says at the very bottom of her her blog statement, it's time for revision. She says, so she's kind of not only creating a call to arms, but then is also kind of saying, like, I'm doing it differently, and this is how. Jenny said that there was some profound comments that she engaged with in some profound comments that she engaged with in the reading, and then she immediately put it into practice. She was like, oh my gosh, this is something I want to look at. And so with her 6th and 7th graders, she just tried it out. And then she goes on to say, like, but then I do have to put this grade in because this is how the parents in the school district say they want to see data. And so I found that really interesting too, so that you're kind of, I feel you, Jenny, because like it was this conundrum that I was constantly kind of within and against. And she says in her blog post, she's like, this conversation that I had with my students is assessment. And sister, yeah, absolutely. Now then, Melissa, in her artist journal, she actually used medium in her pages as part of her message. So part of her medium is a metaphor for the message. And that she offers like this overall, like if I just take all of what she says, I kind of thought like she wants to stay hungry for stay hungry for possibilities out there. And that like there's kind of this new awareness, or maybe this awareness has always been there, but like there's just words to attach to it now about the possibilities of what art education can be and where it might fit in this era of accountability. And then Joy kind of picked up on one of my like ninja moves, which was to like have you guys create an assessment mechanism over something that you can't really assess, and then read books about assessment after you do that. So she looked at her assessment mechanism that she had done for the week before over the top of her artist aesthetic inventory, and really kind of looked at her mechanism through the lens of her readings, which was totally meta, amazing. Kelsey, she had this part in the image where it's a hand and it's like reaching for this perfect assessment mechanism. It's like an orb with like golden rays, but then there's these tentacles going up around it, and the tentacles are like all of the different things that you're being told to do. I mean, it's like you go one place and you're told to do it this way. You go to another place, you're told to do it this way. And there's all of these multiple different things that they're kind of saying, like, this is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. And all these arguments for it. And then she says, as educators, we're continually wading through this murky mass of what type of assessment is right for our students. And oh my gosh, it's so right. You're so right. all this class is designed to do is to like lay that buffet bare and let you make your own plate. I mean, like there's stuff you're gonna have to do because you're in your certain context and there's certain expectations given, totally given. But even those have room. They have room for your expertise. They really do. And you can be a real change agent. Case in point, one-page portfolio changed Camdenton High School. And it was just something that I tried. And it just like, it took off, which is why now I'm like the assessment lady, which is funny. I never thought I would be. But, you know, life is funny that way. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many times you're being told so many things by so many different entities that you don't know which one's good or right. Not good, but right. Just, fair, equitable for you and for your students and for your content. And then Ariane was like, she says in her, like, when she's all done with her image and she's got these, you know, it's kind of like dichotomous. Again, I think you guys are really picking up on the dichotomy that's happening in art and education. And so Ariane had that in hers, and she said at the very end, it's like, but whimsy and brightness and fun is what kind of she wanted to communicate through her imagery. And that she wanted her image that she did about the readings to like kind of invite you into the image a little bit deeper. And she says that that's all of what art, like being an art teacher, like it entails those things, whimsy and brightness and fun, and something to make you engage a little deeper. And I found it so exciting to see somebody say like, you know, we do have all of this assessment stuff, and I'm an art teacher, and I'm gonna keep my focus on the whimsy and on the fun and on the curiosities and the spontaneities, and so it was just great. And so as you can see, there's a multitude of different facets that all of you took on when thinking through these assignments, and so it was incredible to be able to engage with your thinking this way. And I encourage you all to enjoy looking at Shyla Rao's art show about assessment. I hope you enjoy creating a collection of statements that stand out to you, and finding the most intriguing or curiosity-inducing way to categorize them, and then again just revisit Alfie Cohen's book and just find one that calls to you and just do a quick little evidencing that you engaged with it. And that's all it is for the week. So I will see you all again next week. Enjoy yourselves out there. Stay safe. Bye.